Hi, we are the Barcoders, and this is our app Bookworms. It's an app aimed at 7 to 11-year-olds to encourage and monitor extramural reading and assist teachers to monitor their students. My name is Dilyn, and I come from 20 years of IT background. I ran my own department with support technicians, both desktop and on-site, and I've also been an on-site technician myself, installing and maintaining servers, network infrastructure, and security. I chose coding as a new path in my life as I needed new challenges, and it has worked out really, really well for me. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I will hand over to Anita, who will introduce herself and move the presentation forward.
Hi, my name's Anita. Before the School of Code, I completed a degree in environmental science, and I'm now excited to be on my journey as a software developer.
Hi, my name is Mohamed. I was looking for change and I saw how empowered developers were. So I decided to empower myself by learning how to code.
Thanks, Mohamed. I'm Jenny. I did a maths degree before becoming a lawyer, and I spent 10 years as an asset finance solicitor. I then spent a few years self-employed as a textile artist, and during lockdown I started designing online escape rooms. I taught myself how to make a website, and I loved it so much I decided to start a new career in tech. Over to Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I used to run my own cafe and catering business, but I wanted a new challenging and fulfilling career, so I've decided to jump from the frying pan into the world of tech.
Hi everyone, I'm Asma. I graduated with a law degree and I've been on a journey of self-discovery ever since. I've produced legal conferences, taught English in South Korea, and even managed projects for one of the big four. That was until I discovered code, which allowed me to solve problems creatively and affect change more quickly. I'll be taking you through the problem we've chosen to solve. So we discovered that this was the current system 7 to 11-year-olds were using to monitor extracurricular reading. As you can see, it's nothing more than a notebook with a tally of the days of the week and the books that they've read and maybe a couple of comments. What's the problem, you may ask? Well, we found that current system actually wasn't engaging at all for 7 to 11-year-olds. There was nothing incentivizing them to read, nor tracking how many days they've read very consistently. We felt that it lacked efficiency for teachers who were not able to see at a glance which of their students were struggling. If you can imagine a teacher of a class of 30 having to look through each book and then entering into a different system which of your students had read X number of times that week, there's a lot of friction involved in the process. And finally, after looking kind of at some external resources in the Department for Education's EdTech survey in 2021, a lot of teachers cited budgetary constraints as the biggest barrier to implementing EdTech in classrooms. So obviously that led us to our solution, which I'll be handing over to Anita.
So our solution, we set out to provide a modern way for students to log their weekly reading in a fun and engaging way. And as well as this, a way for teachers to access information about their classes' reading at a glance and interact with their students. So we'll now move on to the demo of the app.
And so this is our app, and I'll show you around the student side first. If we log in with Alice's username and password, this will take us to the student homepage, where we can see a carousel of books that Alice is partway through reading. We can see the number of days that she's read for this week, and we can see the number of coins she's earned this week so far. Now the coins are, she gets 1 coin for every minute she's read for, and the coins are used by the teacher to reward the kids for reading, and that would just be whatever reward or encouragement system the teacher has in place in the classroom. And all this data is being pulled from our backend database via a fetch request. Okay, so when Alice comes to record her daily reading, she can either select a book she's already reading from the carousel, or she can add a new one. But let's continue reading Alex Rider for now. So as you can see, she's currently 88% of the way through this book, and in today's reading she will finish the book. So she has to write down the page she started on, the page she finishes on, how many minutes she read for, and include a little summary about what it was she read today. And then she clicks yes to say she's finished the book and submit. And she gets a little confetti shower as celebration, and it takes us back to the home page where we can see that the progress bar has gone up by 1 day, the coins have gone up, and the book that she's finished is no longer in the current books carousel. And if we were to go and have a look at the finished books tab, we can see the book she's finished has appeared there along with the date that she finished it on. Okay, so let's now go and walk through how we would go about adding a new book to the library. So you can search for a book by title and author, or just title. So let's say we were searching for Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This makes a fetch request to the Open Library API, and it will make a suggestion. And this, if this was the book we were after, we could click yes, this is my book, In this case it's not quite right, so we can add the details ourselves. So you can add the title in there, add the author, the number of pages, and click add book, and it will appear in our carousel. You'll notice that this just has a default book cover rather than the proper one that we would have got if we'd had got it through the Open Library API. Next up to show you is the dictionary. Now obviously one of the big reasons to encourage kids to read is to expand their vocabulary, so our app has a handy dictionary included within it. Alice can browse from words she's previously looked up if she wants to remember what they mean, or she can add a new word. Whenever she looks up a word, it makes a fetch request from a public dictionary API, and the definition's displayed here, and once she's looked it up she can either get rid of it by pressing that X or add it to a list of words to keep it for later, and then it's there if she needs to remind herself at a later date what that means. There's also a messages tab where she can see the messages sent to her or to the whole class from her teacher. They're all displayed there, and then when she's finished she can log out. And I'll now hand over to Anita, who can walk you through the teacher side.
Thanks, Jenny. So we'll now move on to the teacher side. So when a teacher logs in, they'll be met with information about their class's reading in the whole class view of the dashboard. So as you can see on the left, students who have read less than 4 times are at the top of the list, so the teacher can immediately see who they might want to interact with. The graph at the top shows how many coins have been rewarded to each of the students, so this gives the teacher the opportunity to reward the students in class. So this can be toggled, and this shows the amount of times the students have read in that week, and the line shows the target of 4 times. So overall, the teacher has a quick and easy way of seeing their students' progress that week at a glance. So now if we click on a single student, the data and the dashboard updates to show information about that student. Here the teacher can click on the More Information button, and they'll see more information about what that student has actually been reading. So on this page, the teacher will also have the opportunity to send a message to the student. And messages can also be sent in the whole class view. The dashboard button returns us to the home page.
To enjoy the process and be successful as a team, we agreed on some ground rules, some of which you can see here. As you can see, the team enjoyed working together, diving headfirst into code when needed, but also knowing to take a break when necessary.
Thanks, Mohamed. Sharing our personal values at the start of the project and mostly awful online drawing skills throughout really helped establish a strong team environment where we were happy to spend time getting to know each other and not take things too seriously, as you can see here. Our project management framework adopted a blend of Scrum and other agile methods that have worked well for us. Each morning, a newly assigned project manager would lead the daily stand-up, where we utilised Jira to plan out and manage epics and sprints and establish goals for each. We worked in 2-day sprints, working in pairs or in threes with a driver and a navigator to increase productivity and decrease the likelihood of errors. Regrouping at the end of each day to reflect on our progress and how to move forward. Days were concluded with a retro looking at what went well and what blockers we may have encountered. Our Git strategy consisted of branches for different working environments. We would work on feature branches for specific elements of the application, and after code reviews, these would be merged into the development branch, before finally being merged into the production or main branch. CI/CD was implemented using a combination of GitHub and Heroku features.
So I'll give you a bit more insight into what our methodology looked like in practice. We did not apply Scrum dogmatically, but instead used aspects of the methodology which would allow our team to thrive. As you can see, our tickets and all of the 6 sprints that we ran on the right-hand side. So our longest sprint was our planning and design sprint in week 1, which lasted the whole week. During this sprint, we conducted user research, produced our designs, decided on our architecture, and set up our environment so we all felt ready and confident to start coding in week 2. The time we dedicated to thoroughly planning our project paid off as we were able to split off into front-end and back-end teams with a very clear and unified idea of what we were building. The rest of our sprints were 2 to 3 days long. We decided that shorter sprints would provide quick feedback and allow us to course correct quickly. We were able to deliver the first iteration of our MVP in week 2, which was a completed student section. Our teachers portal was completed in week 3 alongside authentication on the front and back end. Finally, we were able to do end-to-end testing in week 4, fix any remaining bugs, and prepare for our presentation. I'll now hand you off to Anita, who'll be taking you through our product planning process.
We began our planning process using Disney ideation. This started off in the Dreamer Room, where we blocked off time to come up with as many creative ideas as possible. We broke down each of these ideas in the realist room and asked ourselves how feasible each idea would be. Finally, in the critic room, we really imagined how each idea would be received from our users, and we were able to decide on a final idea which every team member agreed on. We then drew out our MVP, so what was absolutely necessary for our app to function, and we put additional features to the side that would be nice to add on in further iterations if we had the time.
Thanks, Anita. Our app has 2 parts to it, and so we have 2 clearly defined users, a child aged between 7 and 11 and a primary school teacher. As our target markets are very specific, it was easy to come up with a precise user persona for each of them. We actually based our child user persona on my 9-year-old daughter Alice, who became our unofficial 7th team member. We got her input a lot during the planning stage to make sure everything we did was truly aimed at our end user. It was her suggestion to include a dictionary as something she would find really useful. Now, we all know that teachers are already vastly overworked, so we knew that whatever we designed for the teacher portal had to be simple, easily accessible, and with the overall goal of making their lives easier. We conducted some user research on a number of primary school teachers via a Google Forms questionnaire. Features like being able to track the number of pages read and the length of time spent reading, as well as the ability to send messages to their students, were things the teachers said they'd value. We took all this into account when planning the functionality of our app. I'll now hand over to Dilyn to talk about the design process.
We utilized low-fidelity wireframes in the beginning to get the look and feel of our app right. This allowed us to structure the website and the application for our target market to navigate relatively easily. From our low fidelity, we expanded into a high fidelity model. We went for chunkier shapes to make it more kid-friendly and chose our color palettes. We then moved over to the teacher side and decided to go for a cleaner look. We went for sharper corners, more toned down colors. The goal was to give as much information to a teacher without overwhelming them with extra work.
Because we put a lot of time into designing our application, we were able to put together a plan which laid out the data we required from each page. We were then able to map out a database schema on dbdiagram.io before touching any code. Both the front-end and back-end team were able to work off of the same schematic diagram, which meant that they were both able to work more efficiently.
As a team, we settled on Next.js to broaden our coding horizons. We decided to use Chart.js, which gave us the opportunity to manipulate external code. Our site went live on Netlify, and I will hand over to Alex to talk about our back-end tech stack.
Thank you, Dilyn. For our backend, given the nature of our data, it was decided a PostgreSQL database set up and hosted on Heroku would be the best option for 2 reasons. As a team, we were excited to learn more about relational database design on a larger scale, and secondly, SQL would allow us to be flexible when querying our data, but at the same time maintain consistency in our table content. To interface our Postgres database, we use Node and Express to quickly create RESTful APIs and perform CRUD operations. These were tested using Postman and authenticated with Firebase.
To test the code on the front end, we used Jest and Cypress. We initially ran into difficulties with attempting to run unit tests on our student side, as we hadn't written all the necessary features as standalone components. So learning from this, we came up with a strategy to ensure that when we wrote the teacher side, all the relevant parts we needed to test were more easily accessible. Once the whole site was complete, we conducted end-to-end testing in Cypress. We worked out what the core functionality of each part of the app was, planned out the user journey, and tested that route to make sure it worked from beginning to end. I'll now hand over to Mohamed to talk about back-end testing.
One of the big issues that we had early on was that whenever we tried to get or add anything to the database, the server would crash. So we identified early on that implementing error handling was an absolute must. We initially tried setting up some error handling using a package that we had found online. After consulting with a few of the coaches, we'd quickly realized that the error handling that we had set up in place was incorrect. I say we, but it was mainly just me. After revisiting the Express documentation, we were able to set up basic but very efficient error handling. This meant that anytime any error occurred with the backend server, it wouldn't crash and we would get feedback onto what was going on. We also implemented tests using super tests and jests and ran them constantly. Anytime that there was an update or any change to our code, we'd run them to ensure that everything that was meant to pass, passed.
So we felt as though the trough of sorrow quite accurately depicted our experience implementing authentication on this project, as it proved to be quite a blocker. Our target users were 7 to 11-year-olds within a school context, so we knew we'd want to an email password login, and that we wouldn't have much use for login via social provider, nor were we really looking to implement multi-factor authentication as part of our MVP. So it was absolutely vital for us, however, to ensure that our servers were authenticated, as we'd be storing sensitive data about children. We first went with Auth0, and you can say at this point we were quite at the top of the trough, because it offered a lot of functionality out of the box, but we ran into challenges when trying to expose a valid JSON web token within our Next.js app, which would allow us to fetch from our authenticated backend. You could say at this moment we'd hit kind of the bottom of the trough. After some more research, we decided to pivot and abandon our initial plan in favour of Firebase, which offered a much simpler setup and the added benefit of allowing us to actually embed our login form into our website without the need for a redirect, which we felt would prove to be a much better login experience for our young users. Ultimately, after running into some more issues implementing Firebase, we actually realised the issue laid in the way in which we were attempting to integrate authentication to our back-end code. We should have considered authentication a lot earlier in the process, and so that we could structure our fetch requests in a way that would align with our chosen provider. Ultimately, authentication turned out to be a great learning experience, and we were able to implement it successfully into our app. I'll now hand you over to Dilyn.
Besides the vast amounts of Next.js that I learned that with a clear goal and solid planning and a really, really good team, you can get almost anything done very efficiently with very little conflict.
So these are some of the stretch goals that we had considered. So an example of one of these might be to place more emphasis on the reward system for students, because we've learned in our user research that that's what motivates students at that target age. So this might look like a shop where they can use coins they've been rewarded for the minutes they read, and they can make in-app purchases for different characters. On the teacher side, a stretch goal that we've considered might be to allow the teacher to view data about their students over different time periods, so maybe on a monthly basis or a half term or term.
To close our presentation today, the Barcoders would like to say a big thank you to all the amazing teachers and pupils who have been using our application over the last couple of weeks. Here is some of the amazing feedback we've received from them.